How can an elementary social studies teacher use research and evidence-based pedagogy to address the needs of a diverse student population? In order to meet the needs of many different students, teachers can use differentiated instruction to tailor each lesson around specific student needs. It is important to create a classroom environment that welcomes multiculturalism and acceptance of diverse cultures. Student diversity not only relates to culture, but also diverse learning styles that should be met based on Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences. Regardless of support, a teacher should assess students according to the response to intervention tiered learning that identifies students that are able to learn in the core classroom, with targeted small groups, or from intensive individual intervention. Elementary social studies teachers can implement differentiation, multiculturalism, learning styles, and tiered learning to address the needs of a diverse student population. In order to meet the needs of a diverse student population, teachers must attempt to incorporate differentiated instruction. Fundamental learning experiences such as simulations, role-playing, and independent studies are normal instructional methods in social studies. Typical instructional methods lay the foundation of social studies content within the classroom. According to Kaplan, inherent in the social studies context is the opportunity to develop complex concepts and generalizations, critical thinking, and research methodology, which are essential components of differentiation. Differentiated instructional methods demonstrate the fundamental aspects of social studies content within the classroom. Each component of a differentiated curriculum revolves around meeting the individual needs of each student, which varies with each lesson and unit. Content, lesson plans, and expectations may vary to determine, design, and deliver a method of instruction that best meets a student's individual needs. Multiculturalism represents attitudes, beliefs, values, and policies that affirm inclusivity of cultural and other life pattern differences to the point of producing multicultural individuals. Teaching a developmentally appropriate social studies lesson should provide opportunities and connections that allow students to experience and share other cultures on a local, state, and national level. Many times, different cultures are criticized or disrespected, but a safe environment should be created in the classroom to eliminate these types of negative experiences. I believe that other cultures are underappreciated, not because of true judgment, but because of lacking knowledge and understanding of others' way of living. To develop an accepting, multicultural environment in the classroom, it is important to incorporate cultural diversity through developmentally appropriate practices. Age, language, and cultural appropriateness are three core aspects of learning to consider when demonstrating developmental practices in the classroom. Connecting developmentally appropriate practices and multiculturalism is an influential way to model diversity in multiple meanings of culture. The first step of forming developmentally appropriate practices in a social studies lesson is to decide how to create the best types of learning experiences for the students based on their age and stage of development. Learning about our students through observation and interaction allows us to better teach, care for, and meet the needs of each individual student. Understanding each student's culture reveals background information about their lifestyle, standards, and expectations that provide diverse experiences and influences their lives. To promote multiculturalism, my class is celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, and I will be teaching a lesson about diversity in the Hispanic culture. During this lesson, I use the Making Connections strategy, or real-world connection strategy, that allows the students to develop ideas about the world outside of their personal experiences. For example, the lesson will begin with a discussion about experiences that students have encountered locally with Hispanic culture, like eating at their favorite Mexican restaurant. There will also be a time for the students with a Hispanic heritage in my class to share stories, experiences, and answer questions about their culture. Then, this class will be able to make real-world connections and explore the similarities and differences of Hispanic cultures on the state and national levels. In education, multiple intelligences demonstrate that learners vary in their abilities, and thus teachers need to find out the best strategies to use related to their variations, or to develop programs that instruct students in different domains. Psychologist Howard Gardner believed that an IQ score was an irrelevant representation of intelligence, which led to the proposal of the theory of multiple intelligences. Gardner's theory expresses that all people are able to obtain 8 types of intelligences, which include bodily kinesthetic, interpersonal, intrapersonal, logical mathematical, musical, naturalistic, verbal linguistic, and visual spatial. In order to produce effective learning opportunities based on learning style and preference, teachers should present content in different ways that allow students to process and display their knowledge. After establishing the standard and objective for a social studies lesson, I began planning activities and strategies around different learning styles that my students attain. Regardless of the content being taught, I always strive to connect the lesson objective to different forms of movement, socialization, thinking, numbers or logic, music, words, and visuals. For instance, I will be teaching a lesson full of active learning and multiple intelligence strategies on the development of the Gullah culture. I will begin the lesson by asking the students to read a sentence written in the Gullah language, and then I will reveal the students in English. This type of activating strategy will introduce the content while creating student curiosity and engagement for the lesson. I will present the content and vocabulary using a PowerPoint on a smartboard, allowing the students to participate and come to the board. Then, explicit instruction is given for the Gullah culture stations in rotation. Each student will answer one question on their scavenger hunt paper at every station. Each group will get 5 minutes at each station, and then will rotate clockwise to the next station. Station 1 shows the children a video of Gullah storytelling and a video of Gullah music on the iPad. Station 2 is a treasure dig that allows the children to use fishing nets to dig up Gullah treasures that are hidden in the sand. Once the students dig a treasure out of the sand, they look for a picture of their own item on the key and read more about the Gullah treasure. Station 3 is set up to practice paper weaving, with examples of Gullah baskets that were weaved by the Gullah people. Station 4 has peanut butter benet balls for the students to taste and view some of the ingredients that were brought to South Carolina from Africa by the enslaved Africans. Incorporating the Gullah Adventure, a scavenger hunt, into my classroom is an exceptional way to introduce and review content in a way that meets the needs of students with each learning style and all 8 multiple intelligences. At the end of the lesson, each student will be given a minute paper to answer 2 questions, one about what they learned and the other about remaining questions that they have. Students that are given the opportunity to engage, explore, and impact their own learning will be more likely to experience curriculum that is meaningful, personalized, and relevant. According to Cohen and Maxwell, the response to intervention is when those students who are not making adequate progress undergo a series of intense instructional modifications implemented by a qualified person while at the same time being monitored on a continuous basis. During social studies instruction, the use of tiered learning should occur to ensure that each student completes their tasks and meets the lesson objective. The first tier of response to intervention support occurs in the general education classroom with whole group instruction. If the student is not making adequate progress in Tier 1, then Tier 2 is needed for the student to receive small group instruction several times each week in addition to the Tier 1 support. Tier 3 provides intensive and individual instruction as well as Tier 1 and 2 supports for students that lack adequate progress in Tier 2. During my social studies lesson, tiered learning is integrated to monitor and assess student progress, assuring student completion of the lesson objective. After reflecting about the lesson on the development of Gullah culture, I realized that this lesson could be taught differently to include response to intervention supports. To begin the lesson, I will present and review the content with a presentation, a scavenger hunt, and minute papers which contain the theory of multiple intelligences and meet the learning styles of each student. During the whole group instruction, I will observe, ask effective questions, and use checklists to monitor student progress. Small groups of struggling learners will be created based on the data that was collected through the informal assessments. I could either create an additional station in the Gullah Adventure or give the students time to use their devices and research the Gullah culture on their devices after they complete the minute paper. Whether the small group instruction occurs during the scavenger hunt or at the end of the lesson during the research time, I will be able to reteach the content and provide repeated practice for the struggling learners. The small group instruction will also allow me to identify and create intensive instruction for individual students that need additional assistance. Through effective planning and instruction, the response to intervention framework can ensure that each student will meet the lesson objective with adequate support. Multiculturalism, the theory of multiple intelligences, and response to intervention portray a metaphorical image of education that reveals the importance of differentiation. As a future teacher, the application of research and evidence-based practices and strategies must occur in the classroom to attain student success. A teacher's main goal must be to design instruction that meets the needs of each student individually based on their preference and learning style. It takes much time and effort to incorporating differentiation, but having each student gain knowledge and meet the lesson objective is a rewarding outcome where no child is left behind.